All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all the honor, the praise, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Hakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles, a great millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered abroad. All right, this is Brother Barbazal here with a lesson. The Lord wanted us edifying, right? So today, this lesson will be entitled Evil Men and Seducers Shall Wax Worse and Worse, right? And, what you see got going on, of course, the main, topic, right, is, these guys in Genesis, all right, the guy Assad and, and the deacon, Hakah, and these guys have, popped up, time and time again. Just, every once in a while you'll see these guys, go off or, do something that's not in the will of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. All right, which the latest thing, of course, is, them saying that, the judgment that'll take place in Isaiah, the 34th chapter, going into, the judgment of Basra, right, is not, they say that it's not talking about, Babylon, right? It's talking about the actual physical landmass of Basra, which, that's false. All right. And, what you see happen is, these certain individuals, who break off from a group or, want to make a name for themselves, they always, try to be deep. And in doing that, they always have to add things, twist things, take away from the scriptures, and eventually, because they, change this one thing, now they got to keep on adding, certain things to the doctrine, to make it make sense, right? So this is the book of 2 Timothy 3:13. It says, "But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived." Okay, and that's what's happened, right? Like these different groups, IUIC is another example, right? That's another example of a group waxing worse because, the way they, change things, like the always, they're always changing the doctrine, going into the MOTB. One day it's Christianity, the next day it's an embargo, the next day it's sin, and it just looks bad, right? The group Sakari, all of a sudden, because we know that the leader of the Sakari, Al-Azhar, he came out of GMS and he started his own thing and, started making his own doctrine, like taking away the letters of Paul, right? And, this is just a guy who went on a downward spiral, all right? We're seeing a reoccurring theme of that happen, with these different camps, all right? Because they're, not in it truly, to work out their salvation in fear and trembling. There's always an ulterior motive, right? Whether it's, gathering disciples unto themselves, monetary gain, all right, being, the status, the rank, these guys ain't in it for truly, to be, truly be saved, right? Truly receive salvation, truly, during that day, Lord's will be one of the elect, So this is the book of 2 Timothy 4:1. It says, "I charge thee therefore before Yahweh and the Lord Yahushua HaMashiach, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. Preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine." It says, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, And they shall turn away from their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. All right, and that happens a lot. All right, and we seeing it getting a lot worse during these times. Okay, so I'm gonna get another precept. This is the book of Titus 1:10. It says, "For there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision. Yeah, they who know that they're Israelites. Not going into like the Christians, the Catholics. No, those who know the truth, right? However, they don't teach the truth, all right? Or over time, you got certain guys who branch out, do their own thing, and then they just teaching a whole doctrine full of madness. All right, this the that's what happens. All right, verse 11, it says, "Whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake." You see, and these two guys, Genesis, at this point they're pretty much known for doing that. Even with the physical, image they showed of, the so-called lake of fire, right, going into the physical landmass of Basra, right. It was like a river, right. It wasn't even like a actual lake. It was more like a river. All right, which that just shows how they're reaching, how so to speak, just pulling out anything, to be deep, to have that one, one up, which that's not what it's going into. Basra is actually going into Babylon, right? Basra being a chief place in Edom, I believe, was the capital of Edom, and the modern day capital of Edom is what? Babylon, the golden city. Okay, and we know that the destruction, the lake of fire, that's going into destruction that'll take place on Babylon, right? Just because it says, something other than, America, don't mean that it's going to take place in that area, right? Good example, Isaiah the 13th chapter. Obviously, that's talking about Babylon. Okay, or Deuteronomy 28, right, when it goes into being on the slave ships into Egypt. We know that modern day Egypt is Babylon, right? Is America, right? And the scriptures go into that. All right, but what happens, with these different guys who pretty much are rebellious, want to do their own thing, want to have ulterior motives. The Lord slowly chips away at their understanding. All right, and we're seeing that happening. That's why when these guys come out and have a new doctrine, it just gets more and more silly, more and more ridiculous. Okay, and you see that a lot. A lot of these guys who branch out, they get offended. They only, all of a sudden everything they got taught was wrong. The only motive is to tear down, the group, GMS or whoever, whatever group they was in, right? And that's pretty much what goes on. All right. So that's why, when you in this truth, the number one thing you want to have is sincerity. All right, the truth isn't a business hustle, something to get your status up. All right, it's about being a servant of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. All right, in truth and sincerity. Okay, so going into get 2 Peter 2:1, it says, "But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. See, and these guys is bringing, damnable heresies. All right, and these guys have done many, have many questionable, things in their doctrine, right? Like not giving the Lord Yahweh Shai, not worshiping the Lord Yahweh Shai, right? Like taking away Paul's writings, okay? Saying that it's okay to rap, while in the truth, rapping about being the Israelite, having that worldly image, which that's something that when coming into this truth we supposed to flee from. We want to be set apart. We don't want to be in with the world. All right, but that's what a lot of these guys do in order to gain a following. Pander to the woman, right? Appear worldly. Wearing snapbacks. While out there prophesying, which the scriptures are against having your head covered while prophesying, right? But that's what these guys do. Okay, bringing so-called gang culture, into the truth, which that has none of that shit has any place in the truth, man. Trying to twist certain scriptures, right? Like the whole grape thing, right? Because you get offended on what the scriptures say. Okay. So those are just some quick examples. All right. And I'm gonna read it one more time and we're gonna end it. So this is the book of 2 Peter 2:1. It says, "But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even deny the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction." And soon, we definitely will see the Lord start judging, these false prophets, for deceiving many, all right, for spewing damnable heresies, all right, and bring themselves that swift destruction. All right, but that's pretty much the point. Lord willing, it was edifying. So with that, I like to give all the honor, the praise, and glory unto Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushai, by Hashem, Baruch HaKodesh. So